From the city of broad shoulders, this is Chicago Unscripted with CBS News Chicago's Joe Donlon.
Social media and the tech revolution are undeniable and arguably unavoidable factors in our lives. But the question more and more has become, at what cost? And at what cost to our children especially? My guest today has made that issue her life's mission. In her words, providing a seatbelt for kids in a social media world. Larissa May is just 30, but brings an almost ageless wisdom and perspective to the landmines kids are facing today and will face in the future online. She knows because she lived it. Growing up in the suburbs, she got a taste of one of the early messaging systems, and she was hooked. So much so, when she got to Vanderbilt University, she knew she had a problem that was seriously impacting her mental health. It's become an all too common problem that Larissa decided to face and try to change for herself and others. That was 10 years ago. With a $250 grant from Vanderbilt, she started a company called Half the Story, a business dedicated to digital well-being, the fight to push for new standards and create a world where teens aren't consumed by unregulated algorithms. Their mission is to rebuild the next generation's relationship with technology, and it starts with unpacking the toll it takes on our mental health. Today, Larissa and her company are working with the likes of Oprah, Melinda Gates, and Meghan Markle, building a roadmap to help kids navigate a dangerous and unforgiving digital world. Full disclosure here, Larissa's dad is a good friend of mine. We went to Marquette together, so I've been following her career from afar for a while. Her success is undeniable. She has truly become a leading voice for the challenges kids face online. One of my big takeaways from the conversation you're about to hear, remember, every time you pick up your phone, there's an opportunity cost for being on it, an opportunity cost of life, of love, of human connection, of creativity, of devotion. She has a lot to say about where we stand right now, advice for parents and kids, and what she called the digital wellness turning point that lies ahead. Here's Larissa May. Larissa, it is so great to see you and so great to have you on our little program here. Every time I look up on TV, I see you on, CBS Mornings or Good Morning America or the Today Show. Wow.
Thank you for bringing me back home to Sweet Home Chicago.
So I see in descriptions, digital well-being pioneer, global marketing guru. How would you describe yourself?
I would describe myself as a digital peacemaker. I'm slaying digital dragons because, a lot of kids now are growing up in the digital world and they don't know what to do with all these digital dragons around them. So I'm trying to empower them, protect them, and give parents the peace of mind that they need too.
That is a big job, slaying that dragon. I mean, where do you start even?
Well, the journey started 10 years ago, and I still feel like today it's day one. I mean, I started it with $250 in my dorm room because when I was in college, I struggled a lot with my mental health and realized how much of a role technology played in it. And I realized that we lived in a world where we taught kids about physical wellness, but we didn't teach them about digital wellness when we spend most of our days on computer screens. And for the average American teenager, they will spend 30 years of their life behind a screen, which is how old I am. So therefore, every moment up until the one that I'm here today is pretty much representative of the amount of time that if you have a kid, they will spend behind a screen. So I said, look, we got to figure out how to live within this digital playground and not let it take over our lives in the same way that we have to learn how to eat food that makes us feel good.
Well, there's a lot to chop up with that, Larissa. Let's go back a little bit farther because I listened to your TED Talk.
Oh my God, that was when I was like 20. That's what I show people when I'm like, you want to see how bad of a speaker I was 10 years ago?
Oh, that's not true. It was really great. I'm sure if you were to go back and do it again today, it would be different and better. But, what were you, 23 or 24? But
yeah,
still, the point was that you talked about when you were, I think, 10 years old. And what was, I'm not familiar with it was an AIM. That was like an early messenger system. Is that what that was?
Yes, AIM. That was the really first version of internet messaging that I had access to, that I grew up with. And we would message each other back and forth. If you had a crush on someone in your grade, you would create some HTML code and put it in your profile. And that was really where the story began for me in the 90s. But now, for kids, now they're not just messaging their friends. Now they're trying to figure out if who they're messaging is their friend or an AI version or reality of their friend, or if their friends are going to make deep fakes of them saying things and then ultimately get their college applications taken away.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's just such a dangerous landscape. I don't certainly need to tell you. We'll get into that in a minute, but let's go back to that time when you were 10. You said on your TED Talk that was your first addiction. You knew at that point, do you think even at 10 that this was going to be a problem for you?
Yeah, I actually really started thinking about this when I was in high school. I actually did a broadcast journalism program at Berkeley in the summer where I made a film called The Lost Generation and interviewed people from different generations about how tech was impacting them. And so for me, subconsciously, when I really look back at my journey at 10 years old, I think I knew that something changed, that something was pulling me more than the crafts or the arts were in the world around me, which is what I loved at that time. I loved musical theater. I loved all of those things, but the internet had a different type of pull. And I think like many entrepreneurs or leaders, you spend your life trying to solve something for yourself. And I was always very focused and very obsessed with solving very complicated problems. And this one just continued to be one that was evolving and changing. It's almost like trying to catch water in your hands because every single day, new innovations and technologies are being designed, which makes it a lifelong problem to solve.
So it's in the background of your life as a 10-year-old, 12, 14, you started to go to high school. And then what changed when you got to Vanderbilt and you realized that this was a problem for you? You were studying fashion, right?
Well, I made up my own major. I thought I wanted to go into fashion, and I had a fashion blog because at that point in time, I realized that if I was a young person that really mastered the art of digital marketing, I could have a superpower that I could take into the workplace in New York and not have to wait 30 years before I could actually make an impact in a business. But what really changed for me was the shift from text to visual platforms. So AIM was purely a text platform, messaging back and forth. But when I was a junior and senior in high school, that's when Instagram really came into play, which was the first platform where we were really posting photos of ourselves and getting immediate interactions from our friends. And at that moment, I was going through a major life transition of going into college, which is already tough for anyone that has kids that are there. And then I was having to do that while managing what was a digital stage in my pocket and having to put out a reality to the world that I was having fun so that my friends knew from high school I was having fun, my parents. And for me, I really lost that sense of self because I was more focused on the story that I was telling the world than really connecting with my own emotions. And that has really been a perfect analogy to really what I believe, which is that digital wellness is the ability to cultivate positive and healthy relationship with technology, but it's really an inside job. It starts with your feelings, teaching kids self-compassion, emotional resilience, a lot of the things that seem so basic to humanity, but as humanity and technology are converging, believe it or not, I think it's harder for kids to learn how to be a human than it is for them to learn how to code.
Interesting. Yeah. I mean, it is sort of a lost art because of where we are now with technology. But as was it a junior or senior at Vanderbilt that you decided to come up with this program? Because as you've discussed in some of the interviews I've seen, the anxiety was, I don't know, was it crippling? You were dealing with depression as well, and you take all of this back to social media?
Yeah. I mean, really, it was me, my screen, and my dorm room. And I started thinking about the idea during sophomore year, which is really when everything came to a head. And I started going to the psych center pretty much every day for 3 weeks. And it was in that process that I realized I could do everything on paper, take the medicine, go to the gym, eat food. But if I was doing all of those things with my device, I was never going to get better. And so it was really a personal reckoning of being at an incredible healthcare institution and realizing that they were missing such a big part of the story. And that's where half the story was born. It was born out of the idea that we only share one side of who we are online, yet for kids, that can be so isolating because they really struggle with being vulnerable and building real human connections. And so I basically just printed a bunch of stickers with a $250 grant, just like these Half the Story stickers right here, and started bringing people together Gloria Steinem style and having young people connect without screens and share their stories. And, it was a really long journey. I moved to New York after college and was an entrepreneur and was kind of doing a bunch of things like producing music videos. And then I joined 2 other startup teams as the first employee and spent a lot of years bootstrapping the organization through public speaking, and then wound up getting some really incredible people on board in the pandemic when the world finally started to believe that this was an issue, because it was like carrying a boulder up a mountain. No one really believed it until the world shut down and all we had was our screens.
Wow. Yeah.
And that's really the moment that Half the Story was able to come to life. And now 5 years later, we're really facing a whole other set of questions around, what it means to have technology in democracy, to have 5 people be in control over technology, yet have, a million people trying to fight for different policies in each state and all around the world. And I think we're at this point where we have to realize what is the opportunity cost of technology. And as someone that sits and sees young kids, I really think it is our humanity.
Do you think there's any doubt that without social media, you would have been fine? In other words, do you think there was some anxiety you might have dealt with if you had followed the fashion path and if you had followed the marketing path, or was it social media that triggered you?
What I like to say is that technology is a magnifying glass for our emotions. And if your baseline is anxious, adding a magnifying glass on that is just like adding fuel to a flame. It's going to accelerate it. And so for me, I think from a baseline perspective, as someone that was always very type A, high achieving, those feelings were there, but technology just made them even stronger.
What do you think is the biggest concern right now as we look at the landscape, and why you decided to do Half the Story? And I'm guessing you came up with that because of what you said a second ago. We're really only showing half of our lives online. Is that why you used it?
It started as a storytelling platform. I think the greatest issue that we have right now is misinformation at every single level, and that we idolize false things over truth, and that our systems actually support that financially. And from a child risk perspective, because I see it every day, we've gone from a place of someone is writing something mean about me online to someone is literally making a video of me saying something I never said and ruining my life. And we have virtually no systems in place to protect young people against that. And even today, Meta just announced that they're going to take away fact checking. And when you think about minors who are living through times where there's bullying or these types of things happening, that type of decision, especially for young users, is really scary because there isn't really a team in place to help support kids who are victims of those things. And I know that we all say it would never be my kid, but, last year I sat next to a dad who looked just like you, who worked in finance, whose son had a deepfake made of him. Within 3 days, he had 3 people, outside his house with death threats, and 7 out of his 9 college applications taken away through the Common App because these hackers did something to him. And I think when you see that and you think, oh, it's never going to be me. And I'm like, wow, this is just like another dad in Chicago who has no idea what to do about this. And then you take all of the systems away when we don't already have a seatbelt equivalent for the digital world. It's like putting a kid in a car without brakes and without driver's ed. And so that's why we've really focused on educating young people and through Half the Story. And I think that's, where the positive side is, which is, the number one thing we can invest in is knowledge. We can't wait for the world to change, but we can be the change that we want to be in the world.
Is that up to us, Larissa? Is it up to the platforms? Is it up to the government? Yeah. I mean, my goodness, how in the world do we police this?
So it's really, I like to think about it through this delta of change. I think it takes, just like food, it takes many people to tango, right? Every day we wake up, we decide, what's in front of us. Am I going to have this apple or am I going to have Fruit Loops? And they're both sitting there. And I'm lucky enough to have those two options. Now, when it comes to tech, look, as consumers, I think the number one thing that I see right now is that we need to invest in educating our parents and our kids because tech isn't going anywhere. And we've had no national legislation passed in the last 30 years to protect us from the issues. So when you think about where's our time and money best spent, I think it's investing in the next generation to have the knowledge, power, and emotional resilience that they need to explore the digital playground in a safer way. From a big tech perspective, all it really takes is 5 people coming together and saying that they want to do things differently. It's actually that simple. Tech is the most powerful government in the world. It has the minds and the intention of almost every single human being on the planet. Now, that takes a spiritual reckoning that I'm not sure that I necessarily have the power to do, but I hope that by leading by example, and that through people hearing the stories of young people, that maybe they'll do things differently and lead differently. And then the last piece is from the government perspective, which of course is so critical. We need seatbelts for the digital world. We need to have some sort of systems in place because right now it's just moving so quickly that we can't afford to not take care of our most vulnerable minds. So it does really take all of those players, but it also takes the ability to come and sit and have conversations with people that you wouldn't normally talk to. And I think we live in this polarized world where people don't want to sit at the same table.
Mm-hmm.
They don't want to talk about these issues. And I'm a huge fan of, what is it like to bring together the people on opposite sides of the table or the tech designer and the kids and the psychiatrist and really ensure that we're doing all of these things together as opposed to in silo, because that's the only way we're going to move forward.
Well, there's so many different layers to it too, Larissa. You have, the personal use of social media where, we post our vacation pictures or, things that we're doing. And then you have the situation where people are debating online. And that's obviously gotten pretty divisive. And it's all about the outrage in a lot of ways. I mean, it just seems to me like, and maybe I'm, this sounds like the old man, get off my lawn, but back in the day, we would call our friends, and talk to them about what we had done. Now it seems like we post a few pictures and we don't bother to have that human connection. And we'll say, well, they'll see it online. I don't need to talk to them. So we've gotten to where we're just yelling at each other on the screen, or we're maybe talking to each other by posting on these social media sites, but we don't have the touch, the connection anymore.
No, we don't. The human touch is really losing itself in the screen. And I think you make a really, really good point, which is how do we use technology to drive human connection rather just have a bunch of different little connecting points? And that's one of the biggest things for young people that we really try to get them to think about is if you're going to use your device, like what does it actually look like to feel connected to someone? And sometimes they'll say, hey, it's actually through FaceTiming your grandparent or calling a friend. You're usually not feeling connected when you're saying, hey, what's up? How are you? That's not how you build connection, community, and vulnerability. And that's why I firmly believe the screens are really a symptom for where humanity is, but there's so much work on the inside that we have to do around compassion, around, just a lot of the Midwestern values of showing up for people when you say you're going to do something. And that's what I believe we have to bring more of into the world because it's moving so quickly and these kids just feel like they're under so much pressure, more than I know that I ever felt, and certainly more than you and my dad felt, because I remember my dad got his first cell phone when he went to a March Madness game. And prior to that, he had a pager, which I would page him on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, kids today, I worry in many ways because and I'm sure you've seen this. You go into a restaurant and there's a family of 4 or 5 having dinner together and they're all on their phones. And you wonder, okay, why don't we put the phones down and actually talk to each other? And I think for kids today, especially, it's really terrifying. I would think. I mean, there's so many ways these platforms are being used to exclude people or maybe cut someone out of a picture or you weren't invited to this. And these things are all out there now online for people. And it's part of what makes it so difficult for growing up and why. I mean, talk about the mental health crisis today among kids.
Absolutely. And you said a really important thing here, which is that your kids will model your behavior. And the chances are is that if your kids have a pretty tough relationship with tech, you might as well. And that even came up in a conversation. Like, I don't know if I told you this, but we interviewed yesterday or on Sunday 2 adult psychiatrists, children psychiatrists, and their kids that were twins together on a Zoom chat. And it was the most amazing, enlightening thing because the kids were able to point out very clearly that mom has a better relationship with tech than dad. They say we want to have screen-free dinners, but dad's on his phone at dinner. And this is a psychiatrist, someone that people are paying to support their children. And I think none of us are perfect. We're all victims of the digital world in many ways, but it's on us as parents and as leaders to really set the tone. And I always say it's just like teaching your kids how to put on matching socks or fix their bed in the morning. You have to have these non-negotiables and you have to lead by example before your kids even get a device.
Yeah.
They need to know it's normal to put on a coat when it's cold out. Just like they need to know it's normal to put down your technology, or that I know mom and dad are going to put their phone down before they walk into my room so that when I'm in there and we're reading stories before bedtime, I'm getting there 100%.
Yeah. Now, I have a daughter about your age, and I think when I think back at the days of parenting her, this was, early social media days. I'm sure I made mistakes, but I think in many respects, I just counted on maybe the experience to be, enjoyable and entertaining and positive. And I think maybe that was certainly naive to think that way. But as parents today looking at this, Larissa, what is the first thing you would say to them? Because I'm sure they have a million questions for you. What do you hear the most? How old is too young for a phone?
Yeah.
Should it be a flip phone? Should it be an iPhone? What are the restrictions on the apps?
Yeah. Well, I actually have a newsletter that I've been working on for a new venture to support parents, and it's called The Founding PTAC on Substack, and we answer a lot of those things, which might help parents in real time. But the first thing that I would say to parents is that you have to soothe your child's senses. If you take away their screen, you need to swap it with something that they can do. So what that looks like is maybe it's Play-Doh, maybe it's having friendship bracelets for girls that like to do that. But our kids cannot emotionally regulate themselves, and they need to have something else if you're going to pull a screen away from them. The second thing I would say is don't introduce your kids to tech without sitting down next to them and really engaging on tech with them and understanding what makes them curious. You're never going to be able to build trust in the digital world if you give them tech, walk away, and then just pull the tech away. You have to really sit with them just like you would in driver's ed when they have their permit. Sit with them on the road because it's a bumpy one. The last thing I would say is, which is really, really simple, is just put the phone to bed. When your kids are even 3 years old, like I said earlier, never enter their bedroom or their space with your device. The research shows that even just having a device, you're going to feel less connected and less present with your child. And your presence is always going to be the greatest gift that you can give them. It's building that trust. It's building that positive attachment style that over time will ultimately be tested. But they know, just like I knew my parents would always pick me up from school, they can count on that moment where they have your full presence.
Yeah, you were saying somewhere I heard that kids need to understand that, or parents need to understand that when you're on the phone, the kid knows that phone is more important to you than they are at that moment.
That's the signal is, even for babies, if you're walking them and you're on your phone and pushing the stroller, they know that they're not getting your full attention consciously and subconsciously. They might not be able to say anything about it. I mean, even my pugs know that. When I'm on Zoom, my dogs are jumping on me and they're upset. So if my dog knows, I'm sure our kids know.
What's the thing that scares you the most, Larissa, about the way these platforms use algorithms? And I guess as an example, and I'm not into this as much as you are, obviously, or know nearly as much, but it seems to me like I get fed a lot of content that I didn't necessarily ask for, but I'm being fed it because they think this is what I want to see based on what I've clicked on in the past or what I've watched. And I guess my question is, are there things about the way people are being fed this content that they don't even realize, and especially how dangerous it might be?
You hit the nail on the head. I think the thing that scares me most is actually apathy, because apathy is the antithesis of action. And the speed in which content reaches young people and the gravity of that content within their own echo chamber is the perfect neurobiological storm that leads to apathy. And when you think about a young person, that's supposed to be the time of your life where you're dreaming and you're thinking about all the things that could be possible. But when every day you wake up and you're seeing young kids killed on the other side of the world, or all of these things telling you that you're not skinny enough, or that you're not strong enough, or that you're not making enough money, and that you don't have all of these things, it's really hard to feel worthy as a human. And instead of these algorithms being designed with empathy at the core, they're really driving apathy amongst our youngest consumers, which still every day is the thing that scares me most. But I think now, especially with Meta's recent announcement, is that now it's not just about algorithms, but it's really that these algorithms are putting forth the content that drive the most shock and engagement. And a lot of that content is not based on truth.
Yes.
It's based on fear.
Absolutely.
And even within this movement and within this work, a lot of that fear around devices has prevented parents from even being really able to sit down and talk about the difference between active and passive tech consumption and give their kids the skills for digital wellness, because they're plagued by this fear, which we all know at the end of the day, someone makes money off the fear, and it's usually not us.
And the more outrageous, the more viral it goes.
Exactly. I mean, I'm sure you even feel this, being in the news. It's tough because you have to tell a certain story that drives and leads to different outcomes. And, even for me, and I talk about this a lot with Siobhan, my amazing publicist, we're always waiting to see what the headline is going to be, because that headline might not be aligned with who you are as a person. And I think that's the thing about being a young person that's really scary now, is that, or a leader or anything, is that you just don't know what that headline is going to be. That headline is literally 1/100th of the story, but we're in a culture of headlines because we're in a culture of captions, and social media is teaching us how to consume news and information instead of us learning things and actually fully diving in and then driving our own conclusions from that information.
For kids who think, well, listen, I'm just not going to get involved in this, or I'm not going to be obsessed with it, it's tough because all of the kids are. And, you then take yourself out of the social circle, I guess, as a high schooler, if you say, I'm not going to do social media or whatever. But yet it seems to me, Larissa, that there's a lot of shifting going on right now where kids are realizing just how damaging and how dangerous social media can be. And correct me if I'm wrong, but a lot of schools now are saying no phones during the school day. And the kids seem to be saying, you know what? I'm okay with that. I really am. Some of them are even going with these light phones that can only call and text, right?
Yes. Well, the other side of that equation, which I love to think about with schools, is it's okay to take away the phones, but are you also giving them iPads? And I was laughing because I went back to my grade school and kids didn't even know what a computer lab was. And we know our kids are using devices, but I really believe we have to be creating screen-free recess, screen-free social spaces, actually having places where kids know that they have to go to access their technology or that they can go to socialize, because a lot of schools are still using screens. They might just not be phones. And a lot of kids are missing out on that important phase of cognitive and social development because they're not talking to each other during lunch.
Yeah.
They're not talking to each other when they're waiting for the bell to ring. And to me, those moments are really the most precious. So I'm a big fan of bringing back the computer labs of the 90s and screen-free recess.
What do you make of what Australia has done, banning social media for kids under 16? Is that right? I know you were on Australian TV not too long ago.
I mean, what I'll say is that I think it's a very strong step forward for the world. However, if we're not educating people and we're not actually giving the young kids the skills and tools that they need when they turn 16, it's still going to be the same recipe for disaster because our brains don't stop developing until we're 28 years old. So we still have a lot of work to do, and we need to be investing in education and infrastructure to support the emotional, social, and biological well-being of our young people in the world of digital wellness.
Well, you're trying to do that right now, right? This with Ginkgo and Social Media U. Talk about that and what that's aimed at.
Yeah. So really for me, I look at my vision for myself in this work is to build an ecosystem of digital wellness. And half the story will always stay focused on empowering young people in research and education, especially kids from the most under-resourced communities, and putting young people at the center of that change. I have a vision for storytelling as well, and I'm working on a documentary that will be premiering next year. I'll probably do a screening at some point in Chicago, which I'm really excited about, with a director named Annie Sundberg in New York that is really addressing a lot of the roles of digital flourishing in humanity. And I want to continue to build art and stories around that. And then the last piece is the new business that I'm working on, which is Ginkgo. And it's ultimately a platform to help families navigate the ups and downs of the digital world. And we have a newsletter that we're helping parents with while we're building the tool. But we ultimately want to help parents triage in real time what to do if your kid post something bad online, or what to do if something's happening, and connect them with higher levels of care and medical experts. Because I have so many parents every single day that message me saying, hey, what do I do? My kid did this. And then I get on a call with them. And then I call my best friend who's a psychiatrist. And I realize, for as much as I love doing that, it's not possible to do it for everyone in the world. So,
Right.
And tech's not helping anyone. They don't even have customer service teams. So
Right.
how are we going to help parents that are struggling? And I think it starts before a kid even has a cell phone. And so I want to keep building and hopefully building a better world along the way. It's year 10 and day 1 all at once.
Yeah. And you are picking up support. I know Oprah is now on board with Girls Inc. and you're working, I believe, with Meghan Markle. Some really big, powerful names have come on board to help you because they see the value of what you're doing.
Yes, we've been very lucky to partner with Half the Story and Girls Inc. to ultimately bring our education program to all their girls. And we are lucky to have Melinda Gates and Oprah and Meghan come together to help support and get that off the ground. And we're starting with middle schoolers and hope to keep building that and funding that over time. And I think for me, perhaps it's the Midwestern way, but I've always believed that collaboration is the most important way to move the mountains of the world. And instead of trying to compete with other organizations per se, I think for us, we want to be the best at what we do at Half the Story and partner with bigger players like Girls Inc. to help scale and bring our work to their girls. And so that's a really great model of people coming together. And I think that's what we need more than anything right now.
You've had thousands of people contribute stories to the website about their mental health struggles. Tell us a story that stands out to you among those thousands of stories.
Yeah, I mean, one of the, I think the first, well, I think there's so many. Let me think for a minute here. I think there was a story of a young girl who, and during the pandemic, there were a lot of issues with social media and mental health. And there was a story of a young girl who ultimately was on social media and got so hooked on one of those body fitness trends that she wound up losing 20 or 30 pounds and actually almost losing her life to an eating disorder and having to get airlifted to a hospital. And now her family actually moved her out of California into Egypt where her grandparents are. And I think for me, and really looking at those photos of the young girl, which were so, so painful to see, and thinking that started just by following an influencer on Instagram, which was only a couple of years ago, was just such another reminder that this can happen to any of us anytime we pick up our device. And some people are more resilient than others. Some people are more likely to struggle from these things. So that one really got me. I think the other one, which I alluded to earlier, was I was pretty blown away by the young boy that was playing a game online, was put into a room with a bunch of other people he didn't know. They made a video of him saying something that was culturally insensitive that he never said, distributed it around his entire school. The next day, as I mentioned, they had people outside their house with death threats, and 7 out of his 9 college applications rescinded through the Common App because the people had then reached out to the colleges saying that he had said something culturally insensitive that he never said.
Was he able to clean that up?
I mean, he was not able to get those applications back because I think, to be frank with you, his parents were so worried about his life at that point.
Yeah.
Like, I think they were, from what I understood, they were more worried, is my son going to be alive tomorrow than is he going to get into this college? And so he actually had to take some time off, and he wound up getting into a college. But, it's just no young person should have to go through that. And I think when you see both young boys and young girls, and I don't think we talk enough about what the young boys go through because there's not really a culture of vulnerability around that. But the more that I learn, the more that I feel that this is a lifetime of work and we're just scratching the surface. And I'm really excited to keep building out my ecosystem of digital wellness and to bring more of that work back into Chicago, where I think the Midwest is not always maybe the first place that gets access to these innovations. So it feels very important to me. And actually for my new business, we're actually working with developers out of Chicago. And I hired actually our first full-time hire. She is from Chicago and actually went to high school at the same high school as me, which is very funny. So there's a big Chicago contingency that's calling for me in this next chapter, which I think is just beautiful and fun, and also gives me a good excuse to come see my parents more.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it's hard to, I guess, to put this in a way that sounds like success would equal the end of your business, right? So, but if you were to hold all these companies accountable, if you were to help all the parents, if you were to help as many kids as possible in your ideal world 10 years from now, how would that look? I mean, how would it look where you would say, okay, we did it. This is how the landscape works and should work for kids today?
Yeah. So the first step is rewriting a story from digital sickness to digital wellness, and fighting for that narrative and really embedding that narrative into our culture, into our wellness ecosystem and our healthcare system, which is something that I'm actively doing and fighting for. The second is really just creating seatbelts and brakes in the digital world, national broad sweeping legislation so that we don't have to have 100 groups showing up at different state capitals, and that every kid in America, hopefully the world, but America to start, has the same rights and protections in the digital world. And then the third would be to make digital wellness education in every single school so that we can make digital wellness knowledge accessible to every young person in the United States and on the planet. And really that is what my vision is to make digital wellness accessible to every young person in the world. And I think we can do it. I think it's going to take a long time, but I believe that we're just at this critical point in humanity, and we're already starting to see people are looking for something deeper. They're yearning for deeper connections. And I feel really proud of the work that we've been able to do to date. And I know that I have many more businesses, ventures, and stories to tell over the next however many years I get on the planet. So we'll see.
Well, it's dicey for you too, Larissa, because at the same time you're talking about the dangers and the pitfalls of social media, you're also, I think, in many ways, counting on working with these platforms and companies that are at the forefront of this and finding a way for harmony, I guess, if you will.
Yeah. Well, I think it's a really specific balance and dance. And I think for me, what I just try to do is bring young people in to speak their truth to these platforms, because I don't think you or me speaking to them makes much of an impact. But even this summer, we have a civics academy at Half the Story, which is a free summer camp. We had kids in 44 cities participate in it, where we upskilled them to be digital wellness activists. And we took them into different tech platforms to actually talk about the most impactful features and present to them. And when you give kids the opportunity to do that, and if tech execs want to look at them and go to bed at night and not do anything, it's really on them. So I really see it as my job to give a voice to young people in all of these scenarios. I went on a 10-day meditation retreat in Japan. And at the culmination of the retreat, after hiking and sleeping on the floor in temples and meditating with different people and actually using AI to communicate, because I was one of the only people that did not speak Japanese, I was able to have a conversation with some of the youth. And what I wanted to really understand from them is, what is your wish for the world? And what I found so profound was that what they said to me was that they really wanted inner peace, because they knew that inner peace would lead to world peace. And in that moment, I had a bit of a light bulb moment that really connects back to your question. And that I think my role in this, I've done a lot of fighting for the last 10 years. And I do believe that I have this renewed commitment and desire to help young people find inner peace in everything that we do. And I think technology really disrupts that, as we know, because of the mental, emotional, social repercussions. But I I really believe that that's what I need to do, is to help people find that peace so that they can be in better relationships, so that they can find the things that they're passionate about. And I think it sometimes is so simple. It's very complex, but it's also so simple. And I've seen a lot of time and money be wasted in places and spaces where I think I'll never be able to change people's minds. But when I'm sitting in a room with a bunch of young people and they're talking to me about their dreams, or when I go speak at my middle school, and then after 50 kids stay after because they want to tell me about all their dreams. And I say, look, you can either chase your dreams or spend 30 years behind a screen. Which one do you want to do? When you really position that in an aspirational way, like that's where you can make an impact. And so I think, I don't know, I think if I can get young people to be able to put their screens down and step into their soul and live and find their purposes, which I would say we've both been so lucky, Joe, to live a life of purpose. And that's something that very few people have the opportunity to do, then I think our world would be a better place.
Wow, that's heavy. I was going to ask you if you've ever approached someone, let's just say a teenager you saw on their phone, and felt like you needed to say something to them. And if you haven't,
oh yeah, all the
if
time.
you were to find yourself, okay, what do you tell them?
Yeah, I mean, literally, it was a week ago or something. I was at dinner and there were a bunch of kids sitting next to me and they were sitting on their phones at the next table. And I would just look over. I was like, hey guys, I'm so curious. Like, what are you looking at on your phones? I think it'd be really fun to talk to you and hear about your lives and what's happening, but you're all on your phones. And they all just kind of started mumbling and they're like, well, we're actually texting each other. So we're talking to each other at the table. And I was like, you guys know, like, we can all just talk right now, let's do it. Okay, I'm going to ask you a wild question. And I think I asked, like, what's the craziest thing you ever done? And then they're like, I did this. I jumped off of my parents' roof and then onto my trampoline. And, you just kind of have to hook them. Whereas if I came to the table and said, well, guys, we're at dinner, I'm stealing your phones, they're probably going to be upset with me. And so I just try to meet kids where they're at and really understand what's going on in their head and why they think their device is more fun than the person next to them.
A couple things you said that I found in research leading up to our conversation today, Larissa, was social media has the power to change the world. And what side of social media will you be on? Expand on those two for me, please.
Yeah. So we're at this turning point, what I like to call is really the digital wellness revolution. And at this point where humanity, technology, government, all these things are really sitting in the same pool, there is really a right side to be on. And it's the side of humanity and safety and purpose and supporting young people. And what I'll say is that there's going to be a real business implication for these decisions. And I think young people they're looking at who's looking out for them right now. They're looking at who's not. They're looking at all of these platforms. And I think that some of these platforms that might be billion-dollar businesses could die out over the next 10 years because their leadership is just not showing that they care about humanity and young people at the core. So what I really like to think about is for anyone that works in big tech or anyone that even works in advertising, the stories that we tell have the ability to change the world. One story can change the world. We've seen news break. I even myself have had stories that have been written about me that have changed my entire career. Going on Oprah was a life-changing experience, right? For anyone.
Sure.
When you have that power and you're in that room and there's that headline or there's that business decision that's being made, think about the kids on the other side of the coin. Think about the future and what type of future you want to be accountable for contributing to, because there is a right side of that story to be on right now.
Well, it comes through your love of Chicago, Larissa, and I know how much it meant to you to grow up here and how, you're living in California now, right?
Yes, I am. Quite the opposite of Chicago, but I still love it.
Yeah, well, your dad and I, if social media were around back when we were at Marquette playing hockey, I'm not sure we would have graduated.
Yeah, believe me, I know. So
yeah,
I know.
Well, listen, he is so proud of you, and so is your mom, Loran, and I just enjoy them. They've been such great friends to me over the years, and I know your dad took me out the first day I got here to Chicago and showed me the town, and he's as excited about living here, I know, as I am.
Oh, yeah. Lots of pizza, good people, and yes, I'm so blessed to have amazing parents, and I think even it's such a testament to the time that you guys grew up in, that you're still friends going to Marquette games and exploring Chicago. And those are the types of friendships that we need to teach our next generation to have.
Love it. Just quickly, Larissa, give us the best website for folks to find more information if they have questions as parents or if they have questions as kids in social media. Where do they go?
Yeah. So for parents that are looking for information, so one is www.foundingptac.com, and that's where we're putting all of our information and research up around parenting work. But if anyone's interested in how their teens can get involved, you can go to www.halfthestoryproject.com for all things Half the Story.
Final message for people who are listening, Larissa. What would your statement about sort of the state of where we are right now and where we're headed?
What I would say is that we are at a turning point in humanity where technology and humanity are becoming one. We are at a point of a digital wellness revolution where parents and children are fighting back. And remember that every time you pick up your phone, there's an opportunity cost for being on it. It's the opportunity cost of life, of love, of human connection, of creativity, and of devotion. And the more that we can get our kids to tap into purpose, the better our world will be. And I also like to say that the future is bright and less blue light because we don't want to end on a dark note.
Oh, beautiful. Larissa, it's so great to catch up with you and to learn more about all that you're doing. And wow, what an impressive ride it's been. And I'm sure the ride will continue because it is really such critical work.
Thank you. Yes, I too am somehow confused about the ride and how things have unfolded as they have. When I come back to Chicago, I think half the things that I'm doing, I don't even know how they've happened. And I think it's such a gift. And that's also a testament. The more you can get your kids to tap into their purpose and what they believe in, the more that they can move and change the world. So I just feel grateful that you shared your platform with me. And the next time I'm there, we'll all have to get together with my parents, and it would just be really fun. And I'll have to come see your studio.
My studio, yeah, absolutely. We have the new Street Side studio for our.
Yeah, we'll come cheer you on. We'll be those crazy people outside, like eating popcorn.
All right, Larissa, thanks again. Take care.
Thank you.
My thanks to Larissa for joining me and sharing all that sage insight and advice. I have no doubt even bigger things are ahead for her. Brian Griggs does all the post-production and editing for Chicago Unscripted. Ellie Coder edits our social media content. The music is an original score from Chicago vibraphonist Thaddeus Tukes. Honored to have the legendary Bill Curtis on the introduction. And as always, I thank you for listening to Chicago Unscripted.